how are you guys doing? Good to see you guys.
Let's get it started.
I asked Matt the same thing. I'll ask you. What does Rocco's football background with his dad, how does that work in his favor?
Yeah, it helps his maturity and him feeling like an older guy already. Obviously, man, it's his first start. He's only been in the program for a year, but he doesn't feel like that. You know, he's felt like he's been around the program a ton. He feels like he's, you know, got a good grasp of the offense, a good grasp on what you're thinking as a coach. And, you know, having that pedigree, having that background, he's been around the game a lot. He knows what it looks like. He knows what it looks like to lead a team, to lead an offense, to step out there confidently on the field. And, yeah, those things are invaluable in a position like his where he's, you know, he is stepping on the field and he is a young quarterback. But it doesn't feel like that for him. It doesn't feel like that for our staff, for our players with him out there.
Did you feel like you got cheated to only call 45 plays in your debut?
You know, Matt and I were just talking about that coming out, and you know, it was interesting, and obviously we could have helped ourselves out there, especially in that fourth quarter, converting some of those third downs, and felt like we could have been better there. But yeah, you know, college football, it's changing, and even, you know, just the new clock and how that's working, and yeah, there's some differences I would feel, and obviously it was a little bit unique in that game. They had a few longer drives where our defense stops them, and man, even the first drive of the game, you know, they're taking some time off the clock, and we get a pick six, and you're like, all right, you're up 7-0, and the defense is back out there. But at the same time, it's a reminder of, yeah, you only get a few limited shots, and so you got to be right when you get opportunities, and I think that was a valuable lesson for all of us.
What was the experience like for you, not only calling plays, but just communicating? You know, we talked to Rocco. He said that, like, a lot of the communication went through Jake, and just how the whole operation ran for you.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the biggest things that we emphasized this offseason was just being on the same page, from coach to player throughout a game, from coach to coach throughout a game, knowing what's coming up on the next series, trying to anticipate things, trying to go over that last series, and I thought it was good. You know, again, same thing we just said. You know, you had a few of those long drives where you're waiting to get the ball back, and yeah, I thought our players did a good job of recognizing what they were doing. We knew that was going to be a challenge with you and I, them being so multiple on defense. And so that was going to be critical to our success, is figuring out what their identity was going to be, how they were going to try to line up, how they were going to try to, just attack us. And it's obviously it's going to be important every week, but I thought we got a good dose of that this last week, and of being able to communicate through some of those things, make some adjustments even in game.
Coach, can you kind of describe the growth that you've seen from Rocco as a quarterback, of course, during his time on campus, but especially in this past year?
Yeah, I think, you know, he's spent a lot of time in the film room understanding what we're trying to do first, understanding his quarterback reads, understanding what's going on in the run game, who we can account for, who we can't account for. And, you know, and then the other part is obviously understanding defenses. Like, I feel like you've got to do the first thing first, and then he's evolved in being able to understand what he's getting from a defensive perspective, you know, how that'll challenge what we're doing, how we have answers for how they're trying to line up to us, and how they try to play us. So, you know, that growth, again, it's the same thing. You know, even going out there for that first game, the big reminder to those guys was, you know, we can look at all the film we want. You know, we're watching you and I, we're watching Kent State, we're watching a bunch of stuff going in, preparing for a defensive coordinator who had been at a spot before. But at the end of the day, your rules are your rules, and you got to be able to go and recognize, you know, how the defense is aligned, what coverages they're in, and what your plays, you know, how your plays fit into that.
Nate, I know you don't probably directly work with Darian Porter as much now, obviously, but you did in the past, obviously, before the shift. How has he developed into a guy when he's as good as he is on special teams, and is getting pretty darn good at corner behind TJ and Miles? What has he done for himself going forward? Because there are spots for guys like that.
For sure.
The next level.
For sure. I think first you see him, and you've seen his confidence just grow in who he is as a football player. You know, he shared a story with the team, and I thought it was a valuable story for honestly a bunch of even our younger players to learn and to realize. Like, you see a guy that's made so many plays for us, been in so many critical moments. We ask him to do a lot, And he talked about his confidence as a freshman and as a sophomore, and him just needing to work on himself. And you've obviously seen that. Man, he has to transition, play a new position. So, your confidence goes from what it was to probably taking a hit, transition to a new position. And then you've just seen him put his nose down and go to work to grow that confidence. And so he's made a huge impact on our team, not only what he does on the field, but who he is and how he comes to work every day. He's a guy you just appreciate being around, and that's probably been the only downside of him moving over to the defensive side, that I see him less. But man, he's about as good as it gets to be around just on a day-to-day basis.
Just one more for me real quick. With what Coach Clanton has demanded of the offensive line, the violence and the versatility, how has a guy like Jim Boniface set himself apart, a guy who played tackle in high school and apparently was an all-conference basketball player too? I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
How has he benefited from that to do what he's doing now?
Well, you spoke to it. He's got some athleticism to him that can put him in a great position to win at the line of scrimmage. And he is still a strong kid. Sometimes you talk about an O-lineman being athletic and they're not very strong. Well, he's still a strong kid, but I think his athleticism is his trait that sets him apart a little bit. And he's grown a ton. Again, Coach Clanton has taught all those guys in a different way, and I think their growth in just understanding our run schemes, understanding our pass protection has grown immensely. But at the center spot, that's critical. You got to be in charge. You got to be the captain up front. You got to get guys organized on what's going on, what changes are being made, and he's done a great job of just taking ownership of that leadership opportunity.
Hey, Nate, obviously there's been a lot of conversation, some excitement about some of the young tailbacks in the room, in a deep running back room already. What did Abu specifically kind of show you, and what does he bring long-term potential-wise to the RB room on the offense?
Yeah, he's a dynamic playmaker, and you saw some of that come to life on Saturday. And I think he's hungry. He feels like he could have been even better on some of those things. But as he gets out in space, he can do some special things with the football. And I think anytime you got a guy that's a home run hitter like that, they're going to provide a boost to the offense. And so seeing him out there and seeing him kind of get going a little bit was, I think, encouraging to all of us. But again, it's the same thing I think I talked to you guys about in camp. Like you've seen some of that since he's been here already, and you were excited that you got to see it on a Saturday as well.
How did you evaluate both quarterbacks when you went back and watched the tape, and how do you manage that situation going into Saturday?
Yeah, I was fired up that I was telling them the horror stories of first starts. Okay, now nobody go and look up my stats on my first start, but it wasn't very good. But they didn't have any of those moments where it was just like, man, tough moment, huge mistake. So I think going through your first Saturday and understanding just, man, what college football requires you to do and the consistency it requires you to have, I think they'll both grow a ton from it. I think that there was good moments in the game, great decisions that were made, and a lot of opportunities to make more plays. And so, again, I was fired up about how they led, about their understanding of what we were trying to accomplish, and I'm really excited about their development and just being able to go and execute at an even higher level coming up this week. Yeah, I think, with both of them right now going into practice week, and honestly, it's like this at multiple positions. It's like this at a few of our offensive line positions, at the running back position, that you kind of are in practice, 2 and 3 of the week, and you're figuring out exactly what you think that looks like, exactly how you think it fits for who you're playing. And so I think at every point going forward on Tuesday, I'll probably be anticipating both of those guys taking snaps for us, and then, figuring out exactly what the game plan looks like, exactly how those guys have practiced to figure out what Saturday will look like.
As you took a deep dive into the offensive line and how it performed against you and I, get into that, how it maybe needs to be better this week, and then some of the younger guys, Boniface you mentioned, how did all those guys look? Yeah,
I was encouraged by their physicality. I was encouraged by their tenacity. I think they're just again, you talk about even first-year guys, Jim Boniface, James Neal, I think that their detail of what they're doing in their execution has room to grow. And I think overall as a group, for sure, that you have room to grow. I think one of the things, again, I mentioned it earlier, but one of the challenges going into the game for those guys is they were going to see a number of different defensive fronts. And I thought that they handled that well, that who they were targeting in the run game, that they were consistent in that. They knew what was going on in pass protection, who they were responsible for, which, again, we knew that they were going to present a lot of those challenges, and they pushed themselves to grow there. But, again, anytime you get a unit with some new pieces, that's why people always talk about an experienced O-line. Anytime you got 5 guys that have been around each other a good amount of time, you got confidence that they'll be able to move people off the ball. They'll be on the same page when it comes to pass pro. And I think the more reps that those guys get together, the better they'll be.
Hey, Coach. So I wanted to get your opinion real quick on Jalen Knowles. So obviously, this is your first year coming into Iowa State being the offensive play caller. And I just wanted to see, what have you seen from him this offseason, getting to prepare for this upcoming season as one of the potentially leading receivers for like young quarterbacks like Rocco or JJ?
Yeah, his decision making has improved a lot, and I think we ask him to do a lot down the field. We ask him to make decisions on where he sees safeties aligned and what corners are doing, and so you've seen that greatly improve. His flexibility, obviously, being able to move inside and outside. There's not a lot of guys who have comfort being able to do that, and that's grown a lot. It was something for his first year. He really played in the slot primarily. Last year we mixed him in a few other things, and now you got him at the point where you feel like he can play all 3 receiver positions for us. And so having a guy like that can, you can get the ball into his hands a number of different ways. It helps you a lot as an offense because when he does get the ball in his hands, he's got an opportunity to make huge plays. You saw that on Saturday. You saw it especially on special teams on Saturday, him making those kind of plays.
With Abu, were you in on the conversation in which he ultimately ended up a running back and not recruited as a defensive back? And how did that conversation go? And how adamant were you, or not adamant, or I don't know?
Yeah, no, it's a great story to go back. You started watching and talking to Coach Z at Southeast Polk. Like, he's got a really good feel on just the caliber of athletes he has, what position he feels like they fit, and so got a lot of trust in him. And I remember him saying, even going into that last season for him, like, man, this guy, you definitely got a chance to play this guy at running back. And we probably watched those first handful of games, and you started to see some things, and then probably about halfway through the season, you knew that you would. I felt like, watching one of his games, you felt like you'd be a fool to not start him at running back and just see where he was at and see what he could do there, because you felt like he was a true difference maker. And again, the course of that year goes on, man, the way he plays in the state championship game. And so I remember having a conversation with him in our locker room after, might have been the West Virginia game, and really looking him in the eye and saying, like, hey, man, you good with starting at running back. Like, when you get here, like, hey, it'll all work out however it needs to work out, but we feel like you can be a running back to start here, and we'll cross the other bridge when it gets there. And sure enough, the way that he has come in, the way that he has handled everything, at this point, I mean, Coach Haycock would have to wrestle me down to get him to move anywhere else, because we think he has a chance to be pretty special.
Just to clarify, you were talking about Brad's 11, it's not Mike.
No, that's right, Brad. Yep. No, yeah, that's he's been a great help, obviously, to us, and even seeing Abu and his growth and development, it's the type of program that he's played in. Got good players there now that are playing well too.
Saturday was a big game for the tight end room. Can you kind of just talk, especially Tyler and Benjamin, what you're kind of seeing from the 2 of them right now, but the group in general? I
liked how you called him Benjamin. I'm going to start I call him Ben. Some people call him Benny. But I'm going to start going with Benjamin. You threw me off for a second when I heard Benjamin. I'm like, who is that tight end? But no, it was awesome to see. And I know, I could imagine Coach Campbell probably already talked about it, but Tyler Moore and the work that he's put in, dealing with injuries, dealing with stuff in the offseason, multiple times, multiple years, and for him to come out and play like he did. But again, you go to last week's practice, and that guy is taking all kinds of reps at all kinds of different spots and making a ton of plays. So you felt confidence going in. And then, obviously Ben and what he's been able to do. I think the most encouraging part with him is he's a physical blocker. And so anytime you have the chance to be, physical on the line of scrimmage, physical moving around, blocking on the perimeter, as well as make plays on the perimeter, in the pass game, you can do a lot at that position. And, you feel like those guys are really, really versatile. You say those guys, and then, you got to talk about Gabe Burkle, which same thing. You know, you feel like Gabe Burkle's one of those guys that, oh man, Gabe's one of the veterans, one of the older guys. Like that's Gabe's first time getting out there and playing, and so I was encouraged with his reps and where he was at, and feel like he can make a lot of growth even in these upcoming weeks.
Especially with Tyler, you talked about the injuries he's dealt with. Is it not any more special, but is it special as offensive coordinator to see him go out there?
It was the first thing I said. I mean, he crosses the goal line and scores there, and I'm like, man, there ain't nobody that deserves it more than that guy. It's literally the first thing that came off my mouth, because I felt like, man, he's worked. He's had some tough moments, and just some, man, it seems like, you know, he even in fall camp, man, he had a little bit of an injury, lost a couple days, and he kind of didn't know exactly when he was going to be back. Fought himself back, and obviously was ready to go by week 1. And so that part is it says a lot about him and his character and who he is and what he's all about.
A little bit earlier, you talked about your first opportunity calling plays. In the past, you didn't have that opportunity with the previous rules, but now the clock has changed. Do you kind of feel like that there's some advantage to you not having experience calling plays with the previous rules and learning on the fly with the new rules like everyone else is?
Yeah, most people never look at inexperience as a great advantage, but I guess in that specific situation, there can be, you know, because you know what went on this last Saturday. You know how you feel like you need to adjust, and you know you feel like you don't got some 20-year history of this is how I've always done things, this is how we've always done it, you know, to be able to make those adjustments. And so, yeah, I'm excited to continue to see how the weeks go. Again, every week's different. The situations you're in, what you're seeing defensively, how they're adjusting. There's a lot to it when it comes to, man, going out there and putting a plan together to go and call plays. But I'm excited about where we're at as an offensive staff and the improvements that we can bank. And again, you know, you felt like you watched the film and you saw a lot of, you know, there was probably more first-year players out there on Saturday than we would have anticipated last January. And you saw those guys step up to the challenge and be ready for what we were putting out in front of them. So you're excited to see the growth and the trajectory of those guys as we move forward.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep. Thank you, guys.